In the previous episode, Lin entered the Eternal Trial Grounds. First, he encountered a giant rock monster. Then he ran into some demons and dragons, which were pretty much free experience points. After defeating them, Lin started wandering around. Soon he saw a group of demons and dragons rushing in his direction. Anyway, let's continue. Lin found this quite strange, since there's no way that demons and dragons would ever be shoulder to shoulder in this place. Then, why were they together? He looked closely and noticed the panic and fear in their eyes. They kept looking back as if something terrifying was chasing them. Not knowing what was happening, Lin first reinforced his skeletal armor, which also caught the attention of the two groups. They then began yelling some nonsense far away. But Lin didn't care about what they were yapping about. However, he did see a large swarm of flying creatures chasing after them. After using the detection spell, it was revealed that these were level 40 Soul Devourer insects. Besides having an agility of 20,000, their other attributes were only 5,000. They also had a few skills, but even so, this alone wasn't enough to cause such panic among the abyssal demons and dragons. It was their special traits that made them truly terrifying. It turned out these creatures ignored defenses, were immune to physical attacks, and could eat through almost anything. Plus, they always came in massive swarms. Understanding why the demons and dragons were running, Lin decided to stick around and see what happened next. Suddenly, another group of these creatures surrounded them from the opposite direction, forcing the demons and dragons to form a circle. One of them pointed towards Lin, seeing him as the only escape route without insects. Just as they thought they found a way out, little did they know, Lin had no intention of letting them go. Suddenly, soul flames fell on the creatures. Although unsure why this human was helping them, the demons and dragons quickly used their abilities to attack simultaneously. Just as they thought they were saved, screams filled the air. The abyssal demons and dragons sprinting towards Lin suddenly fell to the ground, all screaming in agony. The rest halted, confused, as they saw Lin slowly walking towards them. The confusion on their faces soon turned into anger and hatred as they glared at Lin, wishing they could kill the detestable human before them. But the insects soon caught up again. They tried to flee, only to be hit by a slow curse. As countless red shackles bound the groups, the dragons, immune to curses, quickly broke free. However, their eyes widened in the next moment. A group of tall, armored, and strikingly handsome skeletal warriors had surrounded them. They were visibly shocked, wondering if these were summoned creatures. But how could there be so many? There was no time to ponder as they charged forward with all their might, preferring to face the skeletons rather than the insects behind them. A dragon knight used a charge skill, attempting to clear a path. With a loud bang, the knight collided with what felt like a massive steel wall, halting his charge and knocking him back. Unsure of what had just happened, he took a few steps back and began threatening Lin, warning him that the soul-devouring insects would consume everything in their path. If Lin didn't make way, he would die here with them. With the creatures closing in, the demons and dragons were stuck, unable to break through, and too scared to run the other way. "You're insane! If we don't escape now, we're all going to die," they yelled anxiously. Lin ignored their words and summoned the undead general. As soon as the undead general appeared, Lin allowed him to take control of the skeletons. The undead general raised his scepter, casting an aura that enveloped all the skeletons, buffing them with legion enhancement. Their eyes began to glow with a bloodthirsty light. Seeing this, the abyssal demons and dragons roared in desperation. Surrounded by an endless swarm of soul-devouring insects above and the legion of skeletal warriors in front, they felt truly doomed. This is the end. This guy's crazy. Does he really think these summoned creatures can hold them off? Their desperation soon turned sour as they laughed bitterly, convinced they were all going to die here. Lin watched them with disdain. Seconds later, the undead general commanded the skeletons to charge, only to be met with the mocking laughter from the two groups. As another wave of soul-devouring insects rushed toward Lin, they hit an invisible barrier. It was Lin's skeletal armor. Even the insects couldn't penetrate it. Lin then raised his hand and used Bone Spike, instantly annihilating a large number of the insects in front of him. Though each kill only yielded 200,000 experience points, it was still a decent haul. More soul-devouring insects swarmed, clashing with the skeletal warriors and inflicting significant damage. The undead general struck his scepter against the ground forcefully, using his legion healing skill. Pillars of light shot up densely into the sky, and the skeletal warriors' wounds healed instantly. Although the skeletal warriors couldn't inflict damage on the insects, they were enough to hold them off. Lin continued using Bone Spike, killing more insects by the second, with numerous system notifications popping up. Before long, most of the insects were cleared out. What just happened? How are they all dead? The demons and dragons stared in disbelief. They couldn't comprehend how a level 30 human could be so powerful. Were they safe? Clearly not. In the next moment, the skeletal warriors closed in on them and began slashing with their greatswords, quickly killing them off. This granted Lin some experience points and merits, allowing him to rise to the rank of 5-star lieutenant. Lin put the corpses to good use, having the skeletal warriors throw them at the newly approaching insects. After using corpse explosion, blasts echoed through the forest, causing the ground to tremble and completely wiping out everything, bringing Lin close to another level up. Suddenly, not far away, a massive hill exploded with a thunderous roar. From within emerged a gigantic soul-devouring insect, much larger than the previous ones, almost 100-fold. It moved with astonishing speed, covering hundreds of meters with a single beat of its wings. This was the level 50 soul-devouring insect king. Its skills and special traits were similar to the others, but it had additional abilities: terrifying scream and second form. Its attributes were overwhelmingly powerful, reaching an astonishing 40,000 in strength and agility, 30,000 in spirit, and 50,000 in vitality. This was the strongest boss Lin had encountered to date. Time to get serious, Lin thought to himself. In front of him, the ground was still littered with the corpses of soul-devouring insects. With corpse explosion, Lin should be able to put up a fight. Now, he just had to lure the insect king nearby. However, the insect king's speed was so fast that it was hard to keep up. In the next second, it let out an earth-shattering scream. The sound waves formed an attack, spreading outwards. The skeletons were wounded upon impact, their bodies starting to shatter. The undead general quickly used Legion healing, casting a light pillar on the skeletons, slowly mending their broken bodies. Lin's skeletal armor creaked and dimmed, with cracks appearing all over it. He was surprised, thinking, so this is what a level 50 boss feels like. To his shock, the insect king opened its massive jaws, and all the soul-devouring insects behind it flew into its mouth. The insect king's body grew larger, swelling with each passing second. On the ground, the corpses of the soul-devouring insects turned into soul fragments, merging into the insect king, and their bodies soon vanished from sight. The insect king continued to scream, its body getting bigger by the second. The scream echoed far and wide. In the distance, a group of human professionals also heard the scream. "It's the soul-devouring insect king! This is bad! It's here! Run!" someone shouted. It wasn't just the humans. Even the demons and dragons were alarmed. They knew that once, the dragons had organized a team of over 100 professionals to kill it, but they only managed to drive it away. Meanwhile, confronting the insect king, Lin's plan fell through. He had hoped to use the insect bodies to his advantage, but he did not expect the insect king to have such an ability. His expression grew serious. With everything being devoured, he wasn't sure if his bone spike could pierce its defenses either. The insect king didn't give him time to think. In an instant, it rushed at him, its sharp limbs striking. Lin's skeletal armor flashed, blocking the attack but becoming heavily damaged. He quickly reinforced his armor and retreated. Then he saw his opportunity. At that moment, Lin used corpse explosion. The corpses of the abyssal demons and dragon professionals around the insect king detonated, dealing significant damage to the creature at the center of the explosion. However, it wasn't enough to kill it. Suddenly, the insect king began to glow, using its soul devour skill. Lin felt a force pulling at his soul, but his skeletal armor flashed again, protecting him. He was relieved, thinking it was a close call. The insect king also tried using the skill on the skeletons, but it obviously wouldn't work on them. It screamed again, and Lin countered with his soul flame. A flicker of flame appeared in his hand, flying towards the insect king's head. Below, the undead general commanded the skeletal warriors to charge, while the skeletal mages began casting spells. The spells from the skeleton mages completely engulfed the insect king. 4 different elements flew towards it, just as the skeletal warriors are closing in, ready to finish the fight. In the next second, the insect king was covered in a bright light, repelling nearby skeletal warriors. Lin frowned as the insect king suddenly entered its second form, with its attributes drastically increasing. Its strength and vitality both soared to 60,000. Not only that, its body also became massive. The Insect King's massive hand swept through, sending a large number of skeletal warriors flying. It then casually picked up one skeleton and threw it into its mouth. To Lin's disbelief, the grating sound of crunching followed as the Insect King devoured his skeleton warrior. Instantly, Lin received a notification that one of his skeleton warriors had been destroyed. The Insect King grabbed 2 more skeleton warriors, shoving them into its mouth and gnawing on them. As it consumed the skeleton warriors, its wounds began to heal more rapidly. After a moment of surprise, Lin had a new plan in mind. He opened his storage space and took out a potion. "All right then, let's see if you can eat faster than I can attack," he said with a cold smirk. The Insect King raised its hand again, grabbing a 3rd skeleton warrior. Lin, having recovered his spirit and mana, began using Soul Flame once more to interrupt it, and summoned the battlefield Ghost Emperor. Immediately afterward, a beam shot out from the Ghost Emperor's fingertip. And with that, we conclude this week's chapters. In the meanwhile, check out this video above or The Witches and Engineer Full Season 7. Thank you for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.